Guys, I'm super pumped today. We got a fish room tour. This guy's basement is filled with tanks. He's a master breeder. It doesn't get any better than this. Let's do this. Oh. Mike, how's it going, sir?
Good, Chris, come on in. Glad
Fish
you
room
could
tour.
make
Come
it
on,
today. Glad you could make it.
So Mike is a master breeder here, and his basement is essentially filled with aquariums. He's got an aquarium over here as well. We'll get to that. What size is that, Mike?
160, I guess, yeah.
160. Look how massive it is. We're going to get to that.
Come on down.
So how long has the fish room been running, Mike?
About 15 years. We purchased the house about 20 years ago, and the basement was wide open. We said, this is the house for us. Come on in. You'll watch your head as you enter.
This is a dream for me, walking into a fish room like this. So the first question that comes to mind is, how many aquariums are in the fish room?
There is about 70 aquariums right now. There are the 3 saltwater tanks. Most of the tanks are 20s. That top bank over there is 15s. And then there are, 16 10 gallons. And I use the 10 gallons more for grow out tanks or specialization.
Okay.
So,
like, it just seemed like you don't see it through the video, but like when you're here, like it seems so massive, like the amount of work. Like I envision you just being down here working every single night, lonely nights. Like, how long did it take to build up to this?
I would say at least 2 years. We
2
kind
years?
of had to do it in parts. The funniest thing is when I went and pulled the permit, I had to pull 2 separate permits because we had to build one half of it because I had the tanks when we moved to this house and built the room. So all the tanks are over there, and then we pulled the permit for one half. And obviously the fish room was the most challenging because all the tanks have a ballast in it, this little black thing right there, so I can turn a knob and the tanks drain. Well, for them to drain, we had to run a 4-inch PVC pipe all along the basement. It probably goes, I'd say, probably 30 feet. And so to dig up the cement was definitely the biggest challenge.
You dug up the cement?
Yeah, we literally had to dig the cement and then run that 4-inch PVC for everything to drain out. So the building inspector just kind of said, I hope you guys know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's a crazy setup.
Many weekends were spent down here, but it was always my dream, and all turned out well.
Okay, well, I'm excited to get into some tanks. Let's maybe start with your top 5 favorite fish, like right now.
Favorite fish or fish I have that are down here right now. My favorite fish are puffers.
Puffers, okay.
The club I belong to, the Minnesota Aquarium Society, and the club teases me because I had a puffer fish. Only fish I ever named. We called it the Crusher, and a couple years in a row he won best of show and stuff. Fortunately, he passed away, but as we walk around the tanks, actually I see one of them's out wanting to say hi to us right now. So there's one of my favorite fish right there. When I have guests over, we can actually feed him by hand. He'll eat krill right out of the hand. And you go from that size of a puffer down to the little pea puffer. So puffers are definitely one. Have you ever heard of an elephant nose fish?
I don't think I have.
Okay,
no.
Elephant nose fish are another one of my favorite, and a lot of people don't carry those in the fact that they can't eat flake food. Their mouth is literally, I got to think how this works. The nose is below the mouth, so they have to go along the tank and kick up the worms and suck them in. I don't have any right now, but elephant nose fish. Right now, I would say out of the 60 tanks, about half of them are Apistos. I've always enjoyed Apistos. And another third of them are the higher end guppies with all the different forms of guppies that are out there. And then just, everything else under the sun that I can think of. But those are the 2 biggest ones right now that you'll see in my tanks are Apistogramma or Apistos and then the guppies.
Okay. And did you gravitate towards Apistos because that you love them or the look of them, or is it like a selling point you make?
The main reason is, again, there's the 455s down here, but majority of the tanks are 20. So Apistos, which average probably about 2 inches or so in size, are the perfect cichlid to have in that size of a tank. The other neat thing with Apistos is you can always tell when they either have babies or are ready to. The female turns yellow. And so I can walk down here and go, oh, got to keep an eye on that fish because she's yellow. And I like the way they breed. They're cave breeders. So you'll notice I have a 3D printer and I've made various size caves. The one thing I learned about breeding the Apistos is you don't want a really small cave because the male's not going to breed sideways. He's got to be straight up. So
Are these the caves?
there's a perfect example of one that's a little bit on the yellow side, and yep, those are the caves. You can see that one's bigger than that one, and depending on the size of the male, he is allowed in so he can spawn with the female. Then the female kicks him out and then pushes rocks in front, and for, I don't know, about a week, 10 days, she's in there with the eggs, and then once the fish hatch, she pushes the rocks away and out they come. So that's one of the neatest things. One of the things that's really kind of become popular in the hobby is many of my friends in the fish club have 3D printers and are printing everything from caves to the racks that I have that hold the food to.
Is this 3D printed or no?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
That's just, I could never find the equipment I needed. You know how that goes. It's like, where's the syringe or where's the baby food?
And by the way, he is considered a master breeder, which I feel is really cool. I noticed that some of these, are Apistos mainly like Blackwater? Are we trying to mimic kind of the Blackwater feel, or?
So you're saying, Mike, why do you have a leaf sitting in that tank? That's the first thing when people come down here. It's like, Mike, why are there leaves in your tank? Apistos, like you said, are blackwater fish. The other thing is their natural habitat is just covered with trees, and those trees obviously shed the leaves. And the Apistos have been known to breed in literally a foot or two of just the leaves and everything. And so I purchase almond leaves. Bulk Resupply carries those, and I purchase those that help keep the water at the natural tannins. And then you'll notice most of my Apisto tanks also have plants on the top, and it's the same thing. Again, with all that shade, they're used to a darker tank as opposed to the bright light. To be honest with you, I knew you guys were coming over to film, so the tanks are actually not as dark as they usually are. Once you guys are done with the filtering, I will go up here and grab my black water tonic, shake that up a little, and then give that a shot, and that'll help.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, to the right of that, you'll probably also see those 2 bags, and what's in those bags is peat mulch. And again, the peat mulch, you don't want to go to your regular garden supply store. You want to get where there's not additional chemicals. Where I live, we're blessed that it's softer water, which Apistos like, but the peat mulch also helps soften it up and maintain that acidic. The Apistos like it more on the acidic side.
I gotta ask, because I have ran multiple fish rooms. Is the utilities pretty crazy for the room?
You mean, why did the city of Roseville send me a letter saying, you might want to check, I think you have a leak in your water faucets because your water seems to be running day and night. And that's because, of course, my RO unit is running, and so the water consumption and electricity, When we built the room from scratch, and the walls and the ceilings are super insulated. But again, if you'll notice behind you, it's 79 degrees in here right now, which is about what we try to keep it at. The reason we do that is that way I don't have to have an individual heater in every tank.
That makes sense.
150 watt heater, it's just all heated.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's you know, it does add probably $100 a month to the bill, but it's well worth it just having, you know, my own little island to go to on those warm winter days.
I like how
or cold winter days.
It's a long line of tanks, and then there's a nook. It's kind of like a L here, you know. Like you think it ends here.
Yes.
But it just keeps going, you know.
We've been in fish rooms from guys from the club that you and I couldn't. I'd have to walk like this to see the tanks, and then you turn around and see those tanks. So it is enjoyable to have the room. We've actually had fish club meetings down here and put chairs up and brought a speaker down.
Do you by chance have any Apisto babies we can see?
I do, but I don't think they're going to come out.
You don't think they're gonna come out?
Looked
Okay.
before.
Do they hide? I suppose they hide for a lot.
Apistos are cave spawners. So there's Mom. Actually, she is coming out, and you'll notice she's got more of a yellow tint. There is about 8 or 9 babies in there. This is the first time she's spawned, but she does a really, really good job of hiding them. Because Apistos are egg layers, as you well know, egg layers, the fry, are so much smaller than the live bearers. So that's the challenge. It's easy to get them to spawn, but those first couple of weeks to get them to eat can be just a super challenge. They're almost impossible to see.
You got to showcase these fish a little bit. I like these colors. That one back there, that's a male, right?
Yep, that's a male. I believe that's an Apistogramma Cichlids fire red, and that's why I love Apistos. So that, again, average size is about 2 inches. Very beautiful color patterns. A little bit more expensive. The average Apisto probably goes for about $40 to $50 a pair. And you're taking a risk. When you buy a pair of Apistos, they may get along just great. It's kind of like speed dating. You put them in the tank, you keep your fingers crossed that they're going to get along. If they don't, you put them in separate tanks and maybe try again later.
Yeah.
The other thing I try to do is I try to put both the common name and the Latin name on all the tanks. And the reason for that is across the country, different states may call the same fish by a different name. So most clubs, they definitely prefer when you're auctioning or you're putting your fish for sale online to have both the Latin name and the common name.
What floaters are these? Is this Salvinia?
Yes.
Salvinia? Yeah. Your floaters look really happy, I gotta say that.
Thanks, yeah. I've had luck with most of my floaters except for the red root floater. I just have a challenge with that.
Yeah, me too. I can't grow it.
Yeah, I know the biggest thing I've heard from others is they do not like moisture on the top of their leaves. So if you have a lot of aeration, you need to turn that down to keep the moisture off the top. But
so you're into guppies a little bit too, huh?
just started to get into guppies again. It's just amazing, all the different varieties and stuff, and the same thing with the endlers. So I right now probably have 8 different tanks with guppy babies in there. Much easier to show you the guppy babies than the Apisto babies.
Yeah.
One of the ones that I'm working with right now that I just think is the prettiest fish is this little red tiger endler right there.
Oh yeah, that is cool.
That one I just got it about 3 weeks ago. I haven't had that breed yet, but that's the one that's getting all the attention this week. But as far as the fry, you'll see there's the fry for the albino full white platinum. Another really pretty guppy is these Vienna guppies. This is their first batch of fry. Yellow cobra delta guppies. We have auctions every other month with our club, and that's how we kind of spread out. And you are finding the fry food.
That's the coolest thing about these fish rooms is the DIY that goes in there.
Exactly,
you know what I mean?
yep.
Yeah. Because like everyone has watched videos on how to do these. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's the nice thing. It's, you know, everyone has a different way of doing it, but if it works, the funny story I tell to a lot of people, it's kind of like bowling. If you go to a bowling alley and watch 40 lanes, probably all 40 people throw that ball a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But if the 10 pins go down, it's a strike. It's the same thing with fish breeding. You can talk to 10 people are going to tell you 10 different things. The joke we have amongst us guys is luckily the fish don't read the fish books. So what works for you works for you. I can give a fish to somebody else that lives 20 miles away and the water parameters are different and that fish is going to breed like crazy.
I noticed right away, because most of the time when you walk into fish shops or fish like rooms like this, the room is kind of humid. Like it smells perfect down here. Like what's the secret to that?
The secret is probably the most expensive part of building the room. People that I talked to about building the room said, you've got to get the right kind of equipment. You can't just put a couple dehumidifiers down here and expect it to be
what I've
so.
done, and it
If we want, I affectionately call it the Wizard of Oz room because behind the curtain is what keeps the fish room from smelling and the moisture. But in a nutshell,
is this like considered an air exchange system?
Exactly. All it is a couple of fans.
Oh, it just pumps air essentially.
It's just bringing the air in, filter it, and then forcing the stale air out and the clean air in. So that's why we have those big octopus arms, is that's just bringing the fresh air in from one end of the house and then throwing the stale air out at the other end.
So I got a couple more questions for you, Mike.
Sure.
This tank here, I noticed that you're marking the water lines. Were you keeping something in here? And
to be honest with you, that tank leaks. That's why there's the empty one underneath.
I get it. Yep.
But interesting question in the fact that what's in there is killifish. I've never really had killifish before, but in a nutshell, I was babysitting for someone who had a family emergency. Killies are one of those neat kind of fish that you can literally keep in a plastic shoebox.
Really?
And so there's annual killies, but no, that's why it's marked. I was tracking how bad it was leaking.
I've done this same exact thing, so I've been there.
So because all my tanks are drilled, we didn't talk too much about that actually. All the tanks are drilled. The black spot is the ballast. I turn a knob and the tanks drain, and then I turn another knob and they fill. And so I can't replace the tank myself because it's got to be drilled to get the ballast to fit in there. But
side question: have you ever resealed a tank and had it leak right after?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've had that happen like 5 times. I feel like no one's talking about it.
I've tried, the clear caulk. I've tried the aquarium caulk. And it's for, what a tank cost. It's like, it's not worth it.
Yeah, you're like, why did I do it?
Yeah.
Unless maybe it's big or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So this tank looks pretty cool.
This is probably my favorite tank. As you've probably noticed as we walked along the fish room, the display tank is the one upstairs, which we'll go see in a minute.
Yep.
And then the saltwater tank, most of the tanks are set up for breeding. So that's why you're only seeing 2 fish in a tank. 3 fish in a tank. That's why some of the tanks have leaves. Some of them have the spawning mops. But this tank, it's called a 40-gallon breeder because a lot of times people will use this size for breeding. But I was fortunate enough to get a really nice blade light for it. And it just looks so nice that it's like I'm putting my favorite fish in here. So some of the fish that you wouldn't commonly see in a pet shop, those are called chocolate grammies. There's a couple of versions of it. That one you can see is more of a chocolate color, and that one is more of a reddish color. So when you asked earlier favorite fish, chocolate grammies are one of my favorite. Otherwise, there's some pencil fish in here. Again, some more pistos, those colorful pistos that we talked about, and then some angelfish that I just got. But I just love the look of how this light just kind of, makes everything look so natural. And
Is this an empty tank? We can't have
that
empty
an
tanks?
empty, well, you can when you have an auction coming up.
Oh, yes, you're right.
So you always have
Yep.
to have one empty tank because you're going to buy something at the auction that's going to need it.
So you talked about these mops.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how these work?
Rainbow fish are egg scatterers, so that's why there's these spawning mops in there. So every day, what I'll do is I'll grab one of the mops and wring it out and then try to get underneath the light here. And oh, look, we're in luck. All those little white spots there, those are rainbow fish eggs. So what I'll do is I'll take these, put them in a tank over there, and that tank I have to maintain a constant temperature, probably about 80 degrees. And hopefully in about a week or so, I'll see super little small babies. With the egg layers, that's the biggest challenge, is the babies are so much smaller than a live bear. So I'm going to take these guys and put them over here.
They're tiny. I had to put on my glasses just to see them.
Oh, I know it.
Yeah.
It's and this is a decent batch. The neat thing about rainbows is a lot of them will lay eggs every day. So it's not like the Apistos where you'll get 100, 150 babies. You may get 8 or 10 eggs, but then the next day you'll get them and the next day you'll get them. So that's why you'll see that there's like 3 or 4 spawning mops in there. Sometimes your mops, you want to go all the way to the bottom, sometimes floating on the top. So a lot of us will just throw 3 or 4 in there at different lengths. Sometimes people even say the color makes a difference. I've always had luck with the green ones.
The secret aquarium.
Our 2 little tanks, it's going to be hard to see your film, but there's two tanks here with the mops in, and the biggest thing when you're hatching out rainbow eggs is to maintain a constant temperature, so about 80 degrees. There's some school of thought that you shouldn't have lights on, so I don't have the lights on. And then in about a week or so, if all goes well, I'll have super little fry, and they got to get this really super fine food. That's what's so nice about there's a lot of companies now that come out with the food. In the old days, I don't know if you remember how you used to feed babies. Hard-boiled egg.
Yeah.
Take the whites and the yolk, put the yolk in a handkerchief, and swirl it around. It was a nightmare. So now we use the brine shrimp and then the fine foods.
So you use that when they're really small, and then you
Exactly. Yep.
Okay,
And then I'll go from this to combining some of this in with the brine shrimp. So depending on the size of their mouth, they can get what they need, and then just work them all up. So.
I've found it to be extremely stressful when you get new babies like that, and feeding them can be stressful.
That's why one of the things I did that we haven't talked about either is a lot of times people ask what this board is for. And to have 60 tanks, it's like, how do you keep track of when you did water changes, when they have babies and things like that? So that's what the board's for. Right now at this time of year, I do a water change in all my tanks before the holidays. But in a nutshell, I will list, like, this means tank 38 had a water change on December 7th, and the little star means that I also clean the rocks and clean the sponge filter. So that's kind of how I keep track of my maintenance.
Yeah, this fish room is amazing. I'm kind of excited about that tank upstairs.
Yeah, let's go and check that one out.
What size did you say that big one
It's
was?
a 160 if I remember correctly.
Okay. So this tank excites me because it's huge, and what screams at me is this jungle valve. Like, it's absolutely insane.
It's one of my favorite plants because it's so easy to grow, and it just keeps growing and growing. A gentleman gave that to me, I would say probably 4 years ago, and maybe it was, I don't know, 2-3 feet, and now it's a great place for them to hide. What I like about the larger size tanks is the fact that the school of fish, they just have much more of a tendency to school.
I feel like maybe in the video you don't notice the sheer size of this, but if I get next to it, like, it's big. And it looks like the acrylic is 1 inch thick or so.
I believe so, yeah. The only thing I didn't like about the tank is when we added everything together. As you know, water weighs about 8.5 pounds a gallon. And, you know, that's over 100 gallons and then a couple 100 pounds of rocks. And as luck would have it, the tank goes the opposite way of the supports in the basement. So we had to reinforce the basement with four beams. Just you got a ton of weight there, but well worth it. And again, with the larger tank, like that one's a perfect example of how large that fish is. There's no way that fish would have grown that large.
Yeah, you don't see them that look, they look like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like the difference when they're in a bigger setup. I agree.
Something tells me that they're looking for food, so let's feed these guys. So we'll pop open the top here and use our holder to keep the top open. What I try to do is give them a variety of food, even though I'm not trying to induce breeding in any of them. It's just always good to have a wide variety. The other thing with a tank this size is you want to have fish that enjoy the different layers of it. So the hatchet fish up there are top layer fish. Those hatchet fish are never going to go any lower than that. So they're going to grab the food in the top. Most of the other fish are mid-level fish. But the clown loach is definitely a bottom feeder. It's never going to go up more than this. So I need to make sure I put some sinking type of foods in here, be it pellets or other types of food that'll sink. So we make sure all the fish at all the different levels get fed. And then it's just kind of a free-for-all. Some of them will look at the stuff and say, no, that's not for me. I'll let those guys have it.
I can see there's an array of plecos in here too, right?
Exactly, yep.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's also a beautiful piece of wood you have in here.
I just can't say enough about driftwood, and it just makes it look so interesting, and it gives them hiding places. And then I love those kind of thermometers, those digital ones now that you can tell at a glance if it's on, and then if it's heating up, that'll turn from the green to the red, so I know that it's maintaining the heat.
Oh, here's the catfish. They're out.
Yep. The albino guy there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I gotta say, you know, different aquarists are into different scapes and looks, but me personally, this is like my look. The heavy driftwood with the greenery, natural. This is probably my favorite tank in the house. So. Yep,
I totally agree, and it is, you know, it's just fun when people come over. They'll walk in and they'll see the tank. And they'll go, wow. It's like, well, that's the end of the tour. It's like, well, someone said you had a bunch of tanks. It's like, okay, we can go downstairs and see the other 70 of them. But remember, this is a community tank. This is a show tank. When we go downstairs, those are set up more for breeding purposes.
Well, Mike, your house is beautiful. I love all the tanks. It's a pleasure. Thanks for the hospitality.
Oh, no.
And guys, make sure to subscribe for more awesome videos like this with BRS Fresh. You're going to see more cool things like master breeders like Mike. Thank you again. See you guys.
Bye, everybody.